Alright, I think we're good. Let's see, is the camera working? Yes. Oh, we're working. Awesome. So, I don't know where exactly, if it was on the left side or the right side I stopped on. So, if there's a little overlap with the last one, that's okay. So, this will definitely be the last one of this. Finally, we're going to finish. Only took forever. Alright. Malleus Maleficarum. Question 30. Of one who has confessed to heresy, is relapsed, and is also impenitent. The 11th method of concluding and terminating a process on behalf of the faith is used when the person accused of heresy, after a diligent discussion of the circumstances of the process and consultation with learned men, is found to have confessed her heresy, and to be impenitent, and to have relapsed into it. And this is when the accused confesses with her own mouth in court that she believes and has practiced such and such. The procedure in this case is the same as that above, and because she is manifestly a heretic, sentence shall be pronounced in the following manner, in the presence of the bishop and judges. We, by the mercy of God, bishop of such city, or judge in the territories of such prince, seeing that you, of such a place and such a diocese, were formerly accused before us, or before such and such our predecessors, of the crime of heresy, naming them, and that you were legally convicted of that crime by your own confession, and the testimony of worthy men, and that you obstinately persisted in it for so many years, but that afterwards, having listened to better advice, you publicly abjured those heresies in such a place and in the form required by the Church. On which account the aforesaid bishop and judge, believing that you had truly renounced the said errors and had returned with Catholic faith to the bosom of the Church, granted you the benefit of absolution, releasing you from the sentence of excommunication by which you were formerly bound, and setting you a salutary penance, if with true heart and faith unfeigned you remained converted to the unity of Holy Church, received you back in mercy. For the Holy Church of God is not closed to such as return to her bosom. But after all the aforesaid, you have to our great grief been accused before us of having again fallen into those damnable heresies, which you formerly abjured in public. Yea, you have done so and so, naming them, in contravention of the said abjuration, and to the damage of your soul. And although we are sore wounded and cut to the heart to have heard such things of you, yet we were in justice compelled to inquire into the matter, to examine the witnesses, and to summon and question you on oath, as it behooved us, and in every particular to process as we are bidden by the canonical institutions, and as we wish to conclude this case beyond any doubt, we summoned a solemn council of men learned in the theological faculty and of those skilled in the canon and civil laws. And having obtained the mature and considered judgment of the said learned men upon every single particular which had been brought to notice, and done in the case, after repeated examination of the whole process and careful and diligent discussion of every circumstance, as long justice demanded, we find that you are legally convicted both by the evidence of credible witnesses and by your own repeated confession that you have fallen and fallen again into the heresies which you abjured. For we find that you have said or done such and such, naming them, wherefore we have reason, in the opinion of the said learned men, and compelled thereto by your own excesses, to judge you as a backslider, according to the canonical decrees. And that we say this with grief, and grieve to say it. He knows from whom nothing is hid, and who seeth into the secrets of all hearts. And with all our hearts we desired and still desire to lead you back to the unity of the Holy Church, and to drive out from your heart the said foul heresy, that so may save your soul and preserve your body and soul from the destruction in hell. And we have exerted our utmost endeavor by various fitting methods to convert to salvation. But you have been given up to your sin, and led away and seduced by an evil spirit, and have chosen to be tortured with fearful and eternal torment in hell, and that your temporal body should here be consumed in the flames, rather than to give ear to better counsels, and renounce your damnable and pestilent errors, and to return to the merciful bosom of our holy Mother Church. Wherefore, since the Church of God can do nothing more for you, having done all that was possible to convert you, we, the bishop and judges, named in the cause on behalf of the faith, sitting in tribunal as judges judging, having before us the holy Gospels, that our judgment may proceed as from the countenance of God, and our eyes see with equity. Before assigned to you for the hearing of your final sentence, we pronounce judgment upon you, here present before us, and condemn and sentence you as truly impenitent and relapsed heretic, and as such to be delivered or abandoned to secular justice, and by this our definitive sentence we cast you out as a truly impenitent and relapsed heretic from our ecclesiastical court, and deliver and abandon you to the power of the secular court, praying that the said secular court will temper or moderate its sentence of death against you. This sentence was given, etc., etc. Question 31. Of one taken and convicted, but denying everything. The 12th method of finishing and concluding a process on behalf of the faith is used when the person accused of heresy, after a diligent examination of the merits of the process and consultation with skilled lawyers, is found to be convicted of heresy by the evidence of the facts or by the legitimate production of witnesses, but not by his own confession. That is to say, he may be convicted by the evidence of the facts, in that he has publicly practiced heresy, or by the evidence of witnesses against whom he can take no legitimate exception. Yet though so taken and convicted, he firmly and constantly denies the charge. See Henry of Segusio on Heresy, question 34. The procedure in such a case is as follows. The accused must be kept in strong durance, fettered and chained, and must often be visited by the officers, both in a body and severally, who will use their own best endeavors and those of others to induce him to discover the truth, telling him that if he refuses and persists in his denial, he will in the end be abandoned to the secular law, and will not be able to escape temporal death. But if he continues for a long time in his denials, the bishop and his officers, now in a body and now severally, now personally and now with the assistance of other honest and upright men, shall summon before them now one witness, now another, and warn him to attend strictly to what he has deposed, and to be sure whether or not he has told the truth, that he should beware lest in damning another temporally, he damn himself eternally. That if he be afraid, let him at least tell them the truth in secret, that the accused should not die unjustly, and let them be careful to talk to him in such a way that they may see clearly whether or not his depositions have been true. But if the witnesses, after this warning, adhere to their statements, and the accused maintains his denials, let not the bishop and his officers on that account be in any haste to pronounce a definitive sentence, and hand the prisoners over to secular law. But let them detain him still longer, now persuading him to confess, now yet again urging the witnesses, but one at a time, to examine their consciences as well. And let the bishop and his officers pay particular attention to that witness who seems to be of the best conscience and the most disposed to good, and let them more insistently charge him on his conscience to speak the truth, whether or not the matter was as he had deposed. And if they see any witness vacillate, or there are any other indications that he has given false evidence, let them attest him according to the counsel of learned men, and proceed as justice shall require. For it is very often found that after a person so convicted by credible witnesses has long persisted in his denials, he has at length relented, especially on being truly informed that he will not be delivered to the secular court, but be admitted to mercy if he confesses his sin, and he has then freely confessed the truth, which he had so long denied. And it is often found that the witnesses, actuated by malice and overcome by enmity, have conspired together to accuse an innocent person of the sin of heresy. But afterwards, at the frequent entreaty of the bishop and his officers, their consciences have been stricken with remorse, and, by divine inspiration, they have revoked their evidence, and confessed that they have out of malice put the crime upon the accused. Therefore, the prisoner in such a case is not to be sentenced hastily, but must be kept for a year or more before he is delivered to the secular court. When a sufficient time has elapsed, and after all possible care has been taken, if the accused who has been thus legally convicted has acknowledged his guilt and confessed in legal from that he hath been for the period stated ensnared in the crime of heresy, and has consented to abjure that and every heresy, and to perform such satisfaction as shall seem proper to the bishop and inquisitor for one convicted of heresy, both by his own confession and the legitimate production of witnesses, then let him, as a penitent heretic, publicly abjure all heresy, in the manner which we have set down in the 8th method of concluding a process on behalf of the faith. But if he has confessed that he hath fallen into such heresy, but nevertheless obstinately adheres to it, he must be delivered to the secular court as an impenitent, after the manner of the 10th method, which we have explained above. But if the accused has remained firm and unmoved in his denial of the charges against him, but the witnesses have withdrawn their charges, revoking their evidence and acknowledging their guilt, confessing that they had put so great a crime upon an innocent man from motives of rancor and hatred, or had been suborned or bribed thereto, then the accused shall be freely discharged, but they shall be punished as false witnesses, accusers, or as informers. This made clear by Paul of Burgos in his comment on the Canon Si Multorum. And sentence or penance shall be pronounced against them as shall seem proper to the bishop and judges. But in any case, such false witnesses must be condemned to perpetual imprisonment on a diet of bread and water, and to do penance for all the days of their life, being made to stand upon the steps before the church door, etc. However, the bishops have power to mitigate or even to increase the sentence after a year or some other period in the usual manner. But if the accused, after a year or other longer period, which has been deemed sufficient, continues to maintain his denials, and the legitimate witnesses abide by their evidence, the bishop and judges shall prepare to abandon him to the secular court, sending to him certain honest men zealous for the faith, especially religious, to tell him that he cannot escape temporal death while he thus persists in his denial, but will be delivered up as an impenitent heretic to the power of the secular court. And the bishop and his officers shall give notice to the bailiff or authority of the secular court that on such a day at such an hour and in such a place, not inside a church, he should come with his attendants to receive an impenitent heretic, whom they will deliver to him, and let him make public proclamation in the usual places that all should be present on such a day at such an hour and place to hear a sermon preached on behalf of the faith, and that the bishop and his officers will hand over a certain obstinate heretic to the secular court. On the appointed day for the pronouncement of sentence, the bishop and his officer shall be in the place aforesaid, and the prisoner shall be placed on high before the assembled clergy and people, so that he may be seen by all, and the secular authorities shall be present before the prisoner. Then sentence shall be pronounced in the following manner: We, by the mercy of God, bishop of such city, or judge in the territories of such prince, seeing that you, of such a place, in such a diocese, have been accused before us of such heresy, naming it, and wishing to be more certainly informed whether the charges made against you were true, and whether you walked in darkness or in the light, we proceeded to inform ourselves by diligently examining the witnesses, by often summoning and questioning you on oath, and admitting an advocate to plead in your defense, and by proceeding in every way as we were bound by the canonical decrees. And wishing to conclude your trial in a manner beyond all doubt, we convinced in solemn council men learned in the theological faculty, and in the canon and the civil laws, and having diligently examined and discussed each circumstance of the process, and maturely and carefully considered, with the said learned men everything which has been said and done in the present case, we find that you have been legally convicted of having been infected with the sin of heresy for so long a time, and that you have said and done such and such, naming them, on account of which it manifestly appears that you are legitimately convicted of the said heresy. But since we desired and still desire that you should confess the truth and renounce the said heresy, and be led back to the bosom of Holy Church, and to the unity of the holy faith, that so you should save your soul and escape the destruction of both your body and soul in hell, we have by our own efforts and those of others, and by delaying your sentence for a long time, tried to induce you to repent. But you, being obstinately given over to wickedness, have scorned to agree to our wholesome advice, and have persisted and do persist with stubborn and defiant mind in your contumacious and dogged denials, and this we say with grief, and grieve and mourn in saying it. But since the Church of God has waited so long for you to repent and acknowledge your guilt, and you have refused and still refuse, her grace and mercy can go no further. Wherefore, that you may be an example to others, and that they may be kept from all such heresies, and that such crimes may not remain unpunished, we, the bishop and judges, named on behalf of the faith, sitting in that tribunal as judges judging, and having before us the holy gospels, that our judgment may proceed as from the countenance of God, and our eyes see with equity, and having before our eyes only God and the glory and honor of the holy faith, we judge, declare, and pronounce sentence, that you, standing here in our presence on this day at the hour and place appointed for the hearing of your final sentence, are an impenitent heretic, and as such to be delivered or abandoned to secular justice. And as an obstinate and impenitent heretic, we have by the sentence cast you off from the ecclesiastical court, and deliver and abandon you to secular justice, and the power of the secular court. And we pray that the said secular court may moderate its sentence of death upon you. This sentence was given, etc. The bishop and judges may, moreover, arrange that such just men zealous for the faith, known to and in confidence the secular court, shall have access to the prisoner while the secular court is performing its office, in order to console him, and even yet induce him to confess the truth, acknowledge his guilt, and renounce his errors. But if it should happen that after the sentence, and when the prisoner is already at the place where he is to be burned, he should say that he wishes to confess the truth, and acknowledge his guilt, and does so, and if he should be willing to abjure that in every heresy, although it may be presumed that he does this rather from fear of death than for the love of the truth, yet I should be of the opinion that he may in mercy be received as a penitent heretic, and be imprisoned for life. See the gloss on the chapters of Abolendum and Excommunicamus. Nevertheless, according to the rigor of the law, the judges ought not to place much faith in conversion of this sort. And furthermore, they can always punish him on account of the temporal injuries which he has committed. Question 32. Of one who is convicted, but who hath fled or contumaciously absents himself. The 13th and last method of arriving at a definite sentence and a process on behalf of the faith is used when the person accused of heresy, after a diligent discussion of the merits of the process and consultation with learned lawyers, is found to be convicted of heresy, but has made his escape or defiantly absents himself after the expiration of a set time. And this happens in 3 cases. First, when the accused is convicted of heresy by his own confession, or by the evidence of the facts, or by the legitimate production of witnesses, but has fled or has absented himself and refused to appear after being legally summoned. Secondly, when a person has been accused and certain information has been laid against him on account of which he rests under some suspicion, even if it be only a light one, and he has been summoned to answer for his faith. And because he has defiantly refused to appear, he is excommunicated and has stubbornly remained in that excommunication for a year and always defiantly absents himself. The third case is when someone directly obstructs the bishop's or judge's sentence or process on behalf of the faith, or lends his help, advice, or protection for that purpose, and such a person has been stricken with the sword of excommunication. And if he was obstinately endured that excommunication for a year, he is then to be condemned as a heretic who has defied the administration of justice. In the first case, such a person is, according to the canon ad abolendum, to be condemned as an impenitent heretic. In the second and third cases, he is not to be judged as an impenitent heretic, but to be condemned as if he were a penitent heretic. And in any of these cases, the following procedures should be observed. When such a person has been awaited for sufficient time, let him be summoned by the bishop and his officer in the cathedral church of that diocese in which he has sinned, and in the other churches of that place where he had his dwelling, and especially from where he has fled, and let him be summoned in the following manner. We, by the mercy of God, bishop of such diocese, having in our charge the welfare of souls, and having above all the desires of our heart this most earnest desire, that on our time in the said diocese of the church should flourish, and that there should be a fruitful and abundant harvest in that vineyard of the Lord of hosts, which the right hand of the Most High Father has planted in the bosom of the righteous, which the Son of that Father has plentifully watered with his own life-giving blood, which the reviving Spirit of the Paraclete has made fruitful within his by his wonderful and ineffable gifts, which the whole incomprehensible and ineffable blessed Trinity has endowed and enriched with many very great and holy privileges. But the wild boar out of the forest, by which is meant any sort of heretic, has devoured and despoiled it, laying waste the fair fruit of the faith, and planting thorny briars among the vines. And that tortuous serpent, the evil enemy of our human race, who is Satan and the devil, has breathed out venom and poisoned the fruit of the vineyard with the plague of heresy. And this is the field of the Lord, the Catholic Church, to till and cultivate, which the only firstborn Son of God, the Father, descended from the heights of heaven, and sowed it with the miracles and holy discourse, going through towns and villages, and teaching not without great labor. And he chose as his apostles honest laboring men, and showed them the way, endowing them with eternal rewards. And the Son of God himself expects to gather from that field on the day of the last judgment a plentiful harvest, and by the hands of his holy angels to store it in his holy barn in heaven. But the foxes of Samson, two-faced like them, who have fallen into the sin of heresy, having their faces looking both ways, but tied together by their burning tails, run about with many torches amidst the fields of the Lord, now white unto harvest, and shining with the splendor of the faith, and bitterly despoil them, speeding most cunningly here and there, and with their strong attacks, burning, dissipating, and decastation, and subtly and damnably subverting the truth of the holy Catholic faith. Wherefore, since you are fallen into the damned heresies of witches, practicing them publicly in such place, and have been by legitimate witnesses convicted of the sin of heresy, or by your own confession received by us in court, and after your capture you have escaped, refusing the medicine of your salvation. Therefore we have summoned you to answer for the said crimes in person before us. But you, led away and seduced by a wicked spirit, have refused to appear. Or as follows. Wherefore, since you have been accused before us of the sin of heresy, and from information received against you, we have judged that you are under a light suspicion of that sin. We have summoned you to appear personally before us to answer for the Catholic faith. And since having been summoned, you have defiantly refused to appear, we excommunicated you and caused you to be proclaimed excommunicate. And in this state you have remained stubborn for a year, or so many years, hiding here and there, so that even now we do not know whither the evil spirit has led you. And though we have awaited you kindly and mercifully, that you might return to the bosom and the unity of the holy faith. You, being wholly given up to the evil, have scorned to do so. Yet we wish and are bound to justice to conclude this case beyond any question. Now can we pass over with conniving eyes your iniquitous crimes. We, the bishop and judges, in the said cause, on behalf of the faith, require and strictly command, by this our present public edict, that you, the aforesaid, at present in hiding and runaway and fugitive, shall on such a day, of such a month, in such a year, in such a cathedral church, of such a diocese, at the hour of terce, appear personally before us to hear your final sentence, signifying that, whether you appear or not, we shall proceed to our definitive sentence against you, as law and justice shall require. And that our summons may come to your knowledge beforehand, and you may not be able to protect yourself with a plea of ignorance. We wish and command that our said present letters, requisition, and summons be publicly affixed to the doors of the said cathedral church, in witness of all which we have ordered these our present letters to be authorized by the impressions of our seals, given, etc. On the appointed day assigned for the hearing of the final sentence, if the fugitive shall have appeared and consented to abjure publicly all heresy, humbly praying to be admitted to mercy, he is to be admitted if he has not been a backslider, and if he was convicted by his own confession or by the legitimate production of witnesses, he shall abjure and repent as a penitent heretic, according to the manner explained in the 8th method of concluding a process on behalf of the faith. It was gravely suspected and refused to appear when he was summoned to answer for his faith, and was therefore excommunicated, and had endured that excommunication obstinately for a year, but became penitent. Let him be admitted and abjure all heresy, in the manner explained in the 6th method of pronouncing sentence. But if he shall appear and not consent to abjure, let him be delivered as a truly impenitent heretic to the secular court, as was explained in the 10th method. But if he still defiantly refuses to appear, let the sentence be pronounced in the following manner. We, by the mercy of God, bishop of such city, seeing that you, of such a place and such a diocese, were accused before us by public report, and the information of worthy men of the sin of heresy, we, whose duty it is, proceeded to examine and inquire whether there was any truth in the report which had come to our ears. And finding that you were convicted of heresy by the depositions of many credible witnesses, we commanded that you be brought before us in custody. Here let it be said whether he had appeared and be questioned under oath or not. But afterwards, led away and seduced by the advice of the evil spirit, and fearing to have your wounds wholesomely healed with wine and oil, you fled away, or, if it was the case, you broke from your prison in place of detention and fled away, hiding here and there, and we are altogether ignorant of whither the said evil spirit has led you. Hey, Liz. Yeah, I cleaned. It's nice and neat now. We'll see how long that lasts. Yes, I cleaned. It is clean. The only thing I didn't do is clean the rug. Give it a good wash. Alright, how much more do we have left? These are large pages, so it's like, it's forever. Alright, or after this manner. So many ways to convict people. And finding that against you, accused as aforesaid before us of the sin of heresy, there were many indications by reason of which we judged you to be lightly suspected of the said heresy, we summoned you by public edict in such and such churches of such dioceses within a certain time assigned to appear in person before to answer to the said charges against you, and otherwise on matter concerning the faith. But you, following some mad advice, obstinately refused to appear. And when, as in justice bound, we excommunicated you and caused you to be publicly proclaimed excommunicate, you stubbornly remained in that excommunication for more than a year, and kept hidden here and there, so that we do not know whither the evil spirit has led you. and where the holy church of God has long awaited you up to the present day in kindness and mercy, that you might fly to the bosom of her mercy, renouncing your errors and professing the Catholic faith, and be nourished by the bounty of her mercy. But you have refused to consent, persisting in your obstinacy. And since we wished and still wish, as we ought to do, and as justice compels us, to bring your case to an equitable conclusion, we have summoned you to appear in person before us on this day, at this hour and place, to hear your final sentence. And since you have stubbornly refused to appear, you are manifestly proved to abide permanently in your errors and heresies, and this we say with grief, and grieve and say in it. But since we cannot and will not delay to do justice, nor may we tolerate so great disobedience and defiance of the Church of God, for the exaltation of the Catholic faith and the extirpation of vile heresy at the call of justice, and by reason of your disobedience and obstinacy, on this day, at this hour and place heretofore strictly and precisely assigned to you, for the hearing of your final sentence, having diligently and carefully discussed each several circumstance of the process with learned men in the theological faculty, and in the canon and civil laws, sitting in tribunal as judges judging, having before us the holy Gospels, that our judgment may proceed as from the countenance of God, and our eyes see with equity, and having before our eyes only God and the irrefragable truth of the holy faith, and following in the footsteps of the blessed Apostle Paul. In these writings we pronounce final sentence against you, absent or present, as follows, invoking the name of Christ. We, the bishop and judges, named on behalf of the faith, whereas the process of this cause on behalf of the faith has in all things been conducted as the laws require, and whereas you, having been legally summoned, have not appeared, and have not by yourself or any other person excused yourself, and whereas you have for a long time persisted, and still obstinately persist, in the said heresies, and have endured excommunication in the cause of the faith for so many years, and still stubbornly endure it, and whereas the Holy Church of God can do no more for you, since you have persisted and intend to persist in your excommunication in said heresies. Therefore, following in the footsteps of the blessed Apostle Paul, we declare, judge and sentence you, absent or present, to be a stubborn heretic, and as such, to be abandoned to secular justice. And by this our definitive sentence, we drive you from the ecclesiastical court, and abandon you to the power of the secular court, earnestly praying the said court that, if ever it should have you in its power, it will moderate its sentence of death against you. This sentence was given, etc., etc. Here it is to be considered that, if the stubborn fugitive had been convicted of heresy, either by his own confession or by credible witnesses, and had fled before his abjuration, he is by the sentence to be judged an impenitent heretic, and so it must be expressed in the sentence. But if, on the other hand, he has not been convicted, but had been summoned as one under suspicion to answer for his faith, and because he has refused to appear, he has been excommunicated and has obstinately endured that excommunication for more than a year, and has finally refused to appear, then he is not to be judged a heretic, but as a heretic and must be condemned as such, and so it must be expressed in the sentence as it is said above. Question 33. Of the method of passing sentence upon one who has been accused by another witch, who has been or is to be burned at the stake. The 14th method of finally concluding a process on behalf of the faith is used when the person accused of heresy, after a careful discussion of the circumstances of the process with reference to the informant and consultation with learned lawyers, is found to be accused of that heresy only by another witch, who has been or is to be burned. And this can happen in 13 ways in 13 cases, for a person so accused is either found innocent and is to be freely discharged, or she is found to be generally defamed for that heresy, or it is found that in addition to her defamation, she is to be some degree exposed to torture, or she is found to be strongly suspected of heresy, or she is found at the same time defamed and suspected, and so on up to 13 different cases, as was shown in the 20th question. The first case is when she is accused only by a witch in custody and is not convicted either by her own confession or by legitimate witnesses, and there are no other indications found by reason of which she can truly be regarded as suspect. In such a case, she is to be entirely absolved, even by the secular judge himself, who has either burned the deponent or is about to burn her either on his own authority or on that commissioned to him by the bishop and judge of the ordinary court. And she shall be absolved in the manner explained in the 20th question. The second case is when, in addition to being accused by a witch in custody, she is also publicly defamed throughout the whole village or city, so that she has always labored under the particular defamation, but after the deposition of the witch, it has become aggravated. In such a case, the following should be the procedure. The judge should consider that, apart from the general report, nothing particular has been proved against her by other credible witnesses in the village or town, and although perhaps that witch has deposed some serious charges against her, yet since has lost her faith by denying it to the devil, judges should give no ready credence to her words, unless there should be other circumstances which aggravate that report, and then the case would fall under the third and following case. Therefore, she should be enjoined a canonical purgation, and the sentence should be pronounced as shown in the 21st question. And if the civil judge orders this purgation to be made before the bishop, and ends with a solemn declaration that, if she should fail, then as an example to others, she should be more severely sentenced by both the ecclesiastical and civil judges, well and good. But if he wishes to conduct it himself, let him command her to find 10 or 20 compurgators of her own class, and proceed in accordance with the second method of sentencing such, except that, if she has to be excommunicated, then he must have recourse to the ordinary, and this would be the case if she refused to purge herself. The third case, then, happens when the person so accused is not convicted by her own confession, not by the evidence of the facts, nor by credible witnesses, nor are there any other indications as to any fact in which she had ever been marked by the other inhabitants of that town or village, except her general reputation among them. But the general report has become intensified by the detention of that witch in custody, as that it is said that she had been her companion in everything and had participated in her crimes. But even so, the accused firmly denies all this, and nothing of it is known to the other inhabitants, or of anything to save good behavior on her part, though her companionship with the witch is admitted. In such a case, the following is the procedure. First, they are to be brought face to face, and their mutual answers and recriminations noted, to see whether there is any inconsistency in their words, by reason of which the judge can decide from her admissions and denials whether he ought to expose her to torture, and if so, he can proceed as in the third manner of pronouncing a sentence explained in the 22nd question, submitting her to light tortures, at the same time exercising every possible precaution, as we explained at length towards the beginning of the third part, to find out whether she is innocent or guilty. All right, thanks, Liz. Enjoy being a nerd. The fourth case is when a person accused in this manner is found to be lightly suspected, either because of her own confession or because of the depositions of the other witch in custody. There are some who include among these those who should be thus lightly suspected, those who go and consult witches for any purpose, or have procured for themselves a lover by stirring up hatred between married folk, or have consorted with witches in order to obtain some temporal advantage. But such are to be excommunicated as followers of heretics, according to the canon C. Excommunicamus, where it says, "Similarly, we judge those to be heretics who believe in their errors, for the effect is presumed from the facts. Therefore, it seems that such are to be more severely sentenced and punished than those who are under a light suspicion of heresy, and are to be judged from light conjectures. For example, if they had performed services for witches, or carried their letters to them, They need not on that account believe in their errors, yet they have not laid information against them, and they have received wages and vails from them. But whether or not such people are to be included in this case, according to the opinion of learned men, the procedure must be as in the case of those under late suspicion, and the judge will act as follows. Such a person will either abjure heresy or will purge herself canonically, as was explained in the fourth method of pronouncing sentence in the 23rd question. However, it seems that the better course is for such a person to be ordered to abjure heresy. For this is more in accordance with the meaning of the Canon C. Excommunicamus, where it speaks of those who are found to be only under some notable suspicion. And if such should relapse, they should not incur the penalty for backsliders. The procedure will be as above explained in the fourth method of sentencing. Though the fifth case is when such person is found to be under a strong suspicion, by reason as before, of her own confession, or of the depositions of the other which in custody. In this class, some include those who directly or indirectly obstruct the court in the process of trying a witch, provided that they do this wittingly. Also, they include all who give help, advice, or protection to those who cause such obstructions. Also, those who instruct summoned or captured heretics to conceal the truth or in some way falsify it. Also, all those who wittingly receive or visit those whom they know to be heretics, or associate with them, send them gifts, or show favor to them. For all such actions, when done with full knowledge, bespeak favor felt towards the sin, and not to the person. And therefore, they say that, when the accused is guilty of any of the above actions, and has been proved so after trial, then she should be sentenced in the fifth method, explained in the 24th question, so that she must abjure all heresy under pain of being punished as a backslider. Yeah, I got it. I'll send you a picture later. As to these contentions, we may say that the judge must take into consideration the household and family of each several witch who has been burned or is detained, for these are generally found to be infected. For witches are instructed by devils to offer to them even their own children. Therefore, there can be no doubt that such children are instructed in all manner of crimes, as is shown in the first part of this work. Again, in a case of simple heresy, it happens that, on account of the familiarity between heretics who are akin to each other, when one is convicted of heresy, it follows that his kindred also are strongly suspected, and the same is true of the heresy of witches. But this present case is made clear in the chapter of the canon Inter Solicitudinis, for a certain dean was, owing to his reputation as a heretic, enjoined a canonical purgation. On account of his familiarity with heretics, he had to make a public abjuration, and through the scandal he was deprived of his benefice, so that the scandal might be allayed. The sixth case, in which such a person is under a grave suspicion, but no simple and bare deposition by another with which in custody can cause this, for there must be in addition some indication of the facts, derived from certain words or deeds, uttered or committed by the witch in custody, in which the accused is at least said to have taken some part, and shared in the evil deeds of the deponent. To understand this, the reader should refer to what was written in the 19th question, especially concerning the grave degree of suspicion, how it arises from grave and convincing conjectures, and how the judge is forced to give an example of this by the case. In simple heresy, of a man summoned to answer in the cause of the faith, and defiantly refusing to appear, on which account he is excommunicated, and if he persists in that state for a year, becomes gravely suspected of heresy. Also, and so likewise, in the case of a person accused, in the way we are considering, the indications of the facts are to be examined, by which she is rendered gravely suspected. Let us put the case that the witch in custody has asserted that the accused has taken part in her evil works of witchcraft, but the accused firmly denies it. What then is to be done? It will be necessary to consider whether there are any facts to engender a strong suspicion of her, and whether that strong suspicion can become a grave one. Thus, if a man has been summoned to answer some charge and has obstinately refused to appear, he would come under a light suspicion of heresy, even if he had not been summoned in a cause concerning the faith. But if he then refused to appear in a cause concerning the faith and was excommunicated for his obstinacy, then he would be strongly suspected, for the light suspicion would become a strong one. And if then he remained obstinate in excommunication for a year, the strong suspicion would become a grave one. Therefore, the judge will consider whether, by reason of her familiarity with the witch in custody, the accused is under a strong suspicion, in the manner shown in the 5th case above, and then he must consider whether there is anything which may turn the strong suspicion into a grave one, for it is presumed that it is possible for this to be the case, on account of the accused having perhaps shared in the crimes of the detained witch, if she has had frequent intercourse with her. Therefore, the judge must proceed as in the 6th method of sentencing, explained in the 25th question. But it may be asked what the judge is to do if the person so accused by a witch in custody still altogether persists in her denials in spite of all indications against her. We answer as follows. First, the judge must consider whether those denials do or do not proceed from the vice of or witchcraft of taciturnity. And as was shown in the 5th and 16th questions of this 3rd part, the judge can know this from her ability or inability to shed tears, or from her insensibility under torture and quick recovery of her strength afterwards. For then the grave suspicion would be aggravated, and in such a case she is by no means to be freely discharged, but according to the 6th method of sentencing, she must be condemned to perpetual imprisonment and penance. I see something. But if she is not infected with the taciturnity of witches, but feels the keenest pains in her torture, whereas others, as has been said, become insensible to pain owing to the witchcraft of taciturnity, then the judge must fall back upon his last expedient of a canonical purgation, and if this should be ordered by a secular judge, it is called a lawful vulgar purgation, since it cannot be classed with other vulgar purgations. And if she should fail in the purgation, she will be judged guilty. The 7th case is when the accused is not found guilty by his own confession, by the evidence of the facts, or by legitimate witnesses, but is only found to be accused by a witch in custody. And there are also some indications found which bring him under light or strong suspicion, as for example, that he had great familiarity with witches, in which case he would, according to the canon, have to undergo a canonical purgation on account of the general report concerning him, and on account of the suspicion against him, he must abjure heresy under pain of being punished as a backslider, if it was a strong suspicion, but not if it was a light one. The 8th case occurs when the person so accused is found to have confessed that heresy, but to be penitent and never to have relapsed. But here it is to be noted that in this and the other cases, where it is a question of those who have or have not relapsed, and who are not penitent, these distinctions are made only for the benefit of the judges who are not concerned with the infliction of the extreme penalty. Therefore, the civil judge may proceed in accordance with the civil and imperial laws, as justice shall demand in the case of one who has confessed, no matter whether or not she be penitent, or whether or not she have relapsed. Only he may have recourse to those 13 methods of pronouncing sentence and act in accordance with them, if any doubtful question should arise. All right. I'm going to stop there because my voice is going. It's getting a little painful to read. So I'm going to try tomorrow to finish, since it should be short. So sorry about that. I guess that's what I get for taking so long off from reading. But anyway, thank you for hanging. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Later.